I want to tell you how I go about keeping myself on track with brioche knitting. And essentially, what I do is keep an eye on these columns of knit stitches. That's the easiest thing for me to identify. And of course, I need to know, depending on the round I'm doing, what I'm supposed to do when I see this column of knit stitches. But it is a little helpful to have something to look at as a reminder of what you're supposed to do, as opposed to just thinking in your head, slip one yarn over, brioche knit, slip one yarn over, brioche knit, because you might think those things in your head and be off by a stitch somehow, and that wouldn't be helpful. So getting feedback from what you're looking at in the knitting is a great way to stay on track. So in this case, the columns that are my landmarks are the same color as the yarn I'm using, which means those are brioche knit columns. And of course, you can tell that they're brioche knit columns because they have the two strands at the top there, which you need to brioche knit together. That's another way to keep yourself on track, by looking at how the stitches present themselves. Something else that's good to know: you're not going to be able to finish this project in one sitting. You're going to have to put it down and pick it up again. I think the best way to do that is to put it down after either a brioche knit or a brioche purl, depending on which round you're doing, because then the yarn is secure where you left it, and it's not going to change on you. If you were to put it down after doing the slip with the yarn over, well, you'll have to remember that the yarn was supposed to be over this stitch, and make sure that it is that way when you go to pick it up. So I prefer to put it down after either a brioche knit or a brioche purl, and I also prefer to do this somewhere in the middle of the round. I wouldn't leave it right at the beginning of the round because there are too many variables there. So get past your beginning of round and leave off your work after you do a brioche knit or a brioche purl. Another thing, you might realize all of a sudden that you're off, that you need to tink back a little bit. And it's not terribly hard. Just again, you need to know what's supposed to happen so that you can put things back on the needle in the way they're supposed to go. So here we are moving backwards. I see a twinned stitch, a single stitch, and the twinned stitch is happening at the top of this gray column, and here I am going to undo at the top of this gray column. So it should look like a twinned stitch when I put it back on the left-hand needle. So I'll go in from the front here, make sure that I get both of those strands, and I did, and it looks like a twin stitch, so that's good. And now the next one, because they alternate, needs to look like a single gold stitch. So when I put that one back on the left-hand needle, I don't want this gray yarn to come with it anymore. It should look like a single gold stitch. And your situation could be more chaotic if things are mine are looking like they should on this needle, so it's pretty easy to get them to look like they should on this needle, and that may or may not be the case. But going back a few stitches is certainly possible. It gets, again, much more complicated if you are at the this beginning of round border, and things get more complicated if you try to drop down. In fact, if I needed to fix something like that, I would have to just sort of play around with it. So you'd watch me, doing a 15-minute video to fix, one stitch that's 2 rows down, and that wouldn't be any good. But if you want to tink back, that is something you can do pretty successfully. And just make sure that you know what it's supposed to look like when you get it back on the left-hand needle, and make sure that it does look that way.